All right, I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. And before we start, I understand we've got some of our leadership development program people here. Are you here? Stand up if you are. Introduce yourself. Great.
I'm Tracy Hubbs, and I'm with the Gas Systems Engineering Group here at KUB.
Christy Lund, I work in Fixed Asset Accounting.
And I'm Michelle Wilson, and I worked in Fixed Asset Accounting.
Great. Well, we're glad you're here and visiting with us.
Thank you.
And then, Mr. Coley, I'll help you since we have a obviously unanimous attendance. We'll accept that as a roll call. And everybody was sent the minutes to our last meeting, which I missed. Is there a motion in regard to those minutes?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? First official action today is a part of our board meetings, Resolution 1307, resolution requesting the Treasurer of the State of Tennessee to return to us the unclaimed balance of accounts remitted previously.
You did that so well, I will simply recognize Chris Hood for his presentation.
Good morning, Commissioners. Today I would like to present Resolution 1307 for your consideration. This resolution is a request to the State of Tennessee for the return of any eligible unclaimed property to Knoxville Utilities Board. We are on here. All right. In its most simplistic form, unclaimed property is funds that customers have left on account when terminating service with Knoxville Utilities Board, where we have been unable to locate those customers to return those funds within a 2-year period of time. Generally, this originates from either a customer deposit, an overpayment on an account, or a customer advance for construction. More formally, unclaimed property is defined by state law. State law dictates the processes and procedures by which we must report and remit funds to the state. To be deemed unclaimed, a property must go through a 2-year due diligence process in which KUB is trying to locate that owner. Once KUB exhausts that 2-year process, funds are deemed unclaimed and must be reported to the state by May 1st of the next year. Once the state treasurer receives those funds, state treasurer performs a similar due diligence process for the next 18 months to try to locate the rightful owner of those properties. State process is then exhausted. They cannot locate those owners. At that point in time, KUB may request via board resolution that the funds are returned to KUB's general fund less any administrative costs of the state. Once the funds are returned to KUB, we retain any future claims that may come upon us from a valid owner. This brings us to the resolution that's before you today, Resolution 1307. Is a request to the State of Tennessee to return funds that were reported to them during years 2006 through 2011 in the amount of $184,286. We are requesting the state return those funds to KUB less our administrative costs. Are there any questions I can address this time?
Well, I guess that you answered my question. That was, this has got to be an ongoing situation. I mean, every day it's a rolling type thing, so we just pick certain periods of time.
Exactly. We report annually, and generally we don't bring this request before the board until about a 5-year period has accumulated in which we've got enough funds in which we can go to the state and ask for those funds.
Is this the typical amount? Is it generally around?
This amount is not atypical. The previous time that we requested it was much larger. There's one year that has got a little bit higher balance, and that was due to a clamp effort. But like the report that we will submit for this year may be around $10,000 or so. Typically, it's $10,000 to $20,000 per year, and we will typically get about 80% of this back.
We'll get about what percent?
Typically, it's around 80% that we would get back. The state takes administrative fees, and sometimes they may find some of the customers that we could not locate.
Do they actually give us how to locate the customers, or do we do that on our own?
It's a formal process. We attempt a location initially. A lot of times we will even mail customers checks and come back to us. Before we can actually submit to the state, there's a formal process that's got to occur right before we remit our report to the state to make a formal request of customers.
Okay. So they give us a process that we have
Yes.
to
Yes.
do.
This is very simplified.
And being able to get money back is limited to governmental entities. Private businesses have to comply with the law too and remit, but they don't get it back.
And we still, we can get claims for properties that we may have remitted years ago. As long as that person comes forward and it's a valid claim, we still have to pay that amount to a customer.
Okay. Any other questions?
I move approval.
Second.
Discussion? Is there anybody from the audience to comment on this? Okay. Mr. Coley?
Commissioner Anderson,
Aye.
Commissioner Cannell, Commissioner Hamilton,
Aye.
Commissioner Herbert,
Aye.
Commissioner Cannell,
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson,
Aye.
Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Resolution 1307 is passed.
Great, thanks. President's report?
Commissioners, you know that every time we have a major outage, whether it be power or water or whatever, we try to report to the board on that. As you also know, 2 weeks ago, we had a significant water break in downtown Knoxville. I recognize Bill Elmore to share with you about that event.
Commissioners, it was 2 weeks ago this morning, in the very early morning hours that we had a main break. With 1,300 miles of pipe in our system, main breaks are not that uncommon, but this one was pretty significant. All things considered, when it was all said and done, this one was probably the most complex and difficult repair that our crews have ever had to deal with. Here's a picture of the break. It was, as you can see, at the intersection of State and Main Streets. This photo was taken kind of at the corner of the Dwight Kessel parking garage. This was not at the height of the break. Our crews at this point in time had already started valving down the lines, trying to isolate it, remove that pressure. So as much water as you see boiling out of that hole, there was a lot more earlier in the morning. You can see, though, the hole is beginning to form around that break. What you can't see is the network of utility lines that just spiderweb across that intersection. And by the time all the damage had been done by that escaping water, by the time the crews had isolated the pipe, pumped the hole down, and we were able to get in there and start repairs, we had to make repairs to several cast iron water mains. 24-inch line, a 16-inch line, a 12-inch line, and an 8-inch line. All of those, again, cast iron mains installed in the 1920s. But we also had to make repairs to a wastewater line, a city storm sewer, a large diameter city storm sewer, some traffic control wiring for the city of Knoxville, and we had to work around very carefully a large electrical duct bank that crossed that intersection that was partially undermined by the water. It didn't break, it held up, but we had to work carefully around that over that multi-day restoration event. When the main first broke, we did have some low water pressure in the system at various locations. Once the lines were valved down and we'd isolated the break, though, that pressure was returned to normal pretty quickly. We did have several customers, though, in the immediate vicinity of the break that were impacted and were out of water for an extended period of time. Most significantly, that would have been the BB&T bank building. Those customers were out of water from the time of the break until early Saturday morning when service was restored. We had several other customers, about 5 other customers, tenants of smaller buildings that were impacted as well. And over the weekend, we worked to restore those to service as well, with the last one of them being restored at 8 o'clock on Monday morning. All of those repairs were completed. The street was repaired and traffic returned through that intersection by Monday morning as well. As with most main breaks, we don't know what caused it. Main breaks, unless it's a dig-in, and a contractor is there, you know what happened and who did it, are very difficult to determine. It can be shifting soils, it can be changing water temperatures or ground temperatures. It can be just the constant pounding of traffic over top of that line in an intersection such as this. So while we don't know what happened or what caused the break, we do know that there was no indications prior to that that this line was a problem. It had no history of leaks, no history of breaks, nothing to indicate to us that there was a potential problem here with this line or any of the lines in that intersection. Since these were all cast iron mains, let me talk for just a minute and remind you about our cast iron main replacement program, which is part of our Century 2 effort. The cast iron that we're talking about was used extensively throughout our system and installed prior to the 1970s. In the late 60s, the industry changed a little bit. The manufacturers moved toward a new type of pipe, a ductile iron pipe. Ductile iron is similar in nature in terms of materials, a little bit different in terms of its strength. It's less brittle. It has a 25% longer lifespan. It is less corrosive. It is a much better pipe. So the industry moved in the 70s to start using ductile iron instead of the cast iron that prior to that had been the industry favorite. Today we still have 275 miles of cast iron in our system. Its life expectancy is 100 years. We're replacing it at the rate of 5 miles a year. And we'll have it all out by 2070 to kind of match the time period in which we installed it and last installed in the 1970s. Of that 275 miles, 15 miles of it is the larger diameter pipe, the 12 inches and larger, which is used primarily for transmission mains. It's important to us. A lot of it was installed, or the 15 miles we're talking about was all installed prior to 1940. And we're replacing a mile of that a year. We'll have all of that out in the next 15 years. So by 2030, we'll have all of that larger diameter, older cast iron main out of our system. And we'll then be focused on the remaining smaller diameter cast iron program. If you look at what's left, just to kind of give you a feel for it, it's not concentrated in any one area. It pretty much covers our service territory. Each of these blocks that you see on this map represent about a mile of cast iron main, 12 inches, again, 12 inches and larger prior to 1940 installation dates. So we'll be working and prioritizing over the next 15 years that work based again on leak history, break rates, things of that nature, age and condition, as we remove the last of that from our system. You can see it's pretty well scattered out. We've got some out here on Kingston Pike. We've got some down in the South Knoxville area. We've got some on Tennessee Avenue, which will probably be our focus in the year ahead to get that out of there because it does have a bad break and leak record. There's some in the downtown area, so we'll be addressing these in an appropriate manner as we go forward. Just again, getting back to the break itself, our crews work 12-hour shifts around the clock to do an extraordinary amount of work in a relatively short period of time. The construction crews were pretty much front and center as far as visibility was concerned, but they had a lot of support from other departments, as is the case in typically any emergency response or big event, outage event or whatever with our systems. Operations, customer support, water quality, communication, safety, all the others you see on there, we're supporting directly or indirectly this construction effort to make it possible and make it as successful as possible. The thing I'm most pleased with, honestly, if you look at that site, it was a big hole. 20 feet deep at one point, 30, 40 feet wide in each direction. A lot of mud, a lot of debris, a lot of water, a lot of broken pipes and other constraints within that hole that had to be dealt with. The physical footprint was relatively small, and it had a lot of equipment, a lot of people working in that work zone, and 24 hours around the clock. No injuries, no accidents, no safety incidents of any kind, and that's a tremendous accomplishment. Everybody really focused on getting the job done, getting it done right, and getting it done safely. And so while going home at the end of the day, in and of itself, is a reward for working safely, we also rewarded our people with a breakfast a week ago today. All the folks that you see on that list, the various departments that were involved, the people came down together at Jackson Avenue with our underground folks, and we had a buffet breakfast for everybody to thank them, tell them we appreciated what they had done and the way they did it. So a pretty good conclusion to a massive work effort on the part of a lot of people who worked very hard and very well to condense a great deal of work into a very short period of time. So, as is typically the case with KUB employees, we found out over the years, whether it's an outage event, a main break, or whatever, the more challenging it is, the more difficult it is, seems like the better they are. And they can certainly work safely and work well, and they showed it this time as well. So we appreciate all that they did. Any questions?
I got a lot of calls, people complimenting KUB on doing a good job in a short period of time, so people noticed.
We appreciate that.
On a unrelated question, while you're standing there, there's a lot of KUB guys, trucks downtown. Is that part of the wastewater work?
Right now, we're doing some work on our electrical vaults. We're also doing some wastewater work as well. The work that had been planned that was going to ramp up in the summer in the Fort Sanders area and the downtown area, Fort Sanders work is moving forward. We're reevaluating the scheduling of some of the downtown work, so it's not going to move forward quite as quickly as we thought.
That's all we have.
Okay. Is there anybody here to address the board this morning? Okay. And this meeting of the board is adjourned, and we will reconvene